Hello there. Welcome into a Thursday edition of the show. So glad to have you, whether you're listening on your radio, streaming the show online at extrasports1300.com, or you've downloaded the Extra Sports 1300 app to do your listening. And that app, which is free to download and free to use, is brought to you by Diversus Health, mental health and well-being for all. A veritable cornucopia of sports topics await you, and I'd love to get your thoughts at 719-247-1313. You can call or text into that number. Coming up in about 19 minutes, synchronize your watches. Corey Roldan of KKTV 11 is going to be my guest. Little Nuggets, little Broncos. Also, he might be the perfect guy to talk about last night's game because he sees that matchup from both sides. Because he's, from New Orleans. He's Pell's guy. To get his take on the Nuggets last night. And then, of course, the big story continues to be the Broncos defense without Pat Surtain this Sunday and beyond. You'll hear from their defensive coordinator, Vance Joseph, on how they deal with that loss. But we start with the news the afternoon. Marty Necas locked up to an 8-year contract with the Colorado Avalanche. The deal got done. $92 million over the course of those 8 years. And if you do the math, as I did, well, that's a lie. My calculator did the math. That is $11.5 million a year. Why is that number significant? Because it is $500,000 less than Mikko Rantanen currently plays for with the Dallas Stars. But in fairness, it is also reportedly $250K more than the Avalanche were willing to give Mikko Rantanen last year. Or $250K less. Did I say more? I meant less. $500K less than Mikko Rantanen makes with Dallas. $250K less than the Avalanche were fully prepared to pay Mikko Rantanen. So he's not exactly getting Mikko Rantanen money, but what's $250,000 to $500,000 between friends? And I said this when the Avalanche made the trade last year. Let's wait and see what they do. Because a big part of this was flexibility. Maybe the most important thing. This wasn't about upgrading Mikko Rantanen's position. This was about Chris McFarland deciding that the right direction to go is to save money and use it other places. And then what did the Avalanche turn around and do? They brought in Brock Nelson. So we could talk about $500K less than Mikko Rantanen makes with Dallas, and that doesn't seem like a lot, or just $250K less than the Avalanche were fully willing to pay Mikko Rantanen, which is not much. But really the number that matters here is that it's $5 million less or that Marty Necas, numbers are hard for me, bear with me. $5 million net. Marty Necas this year is being paid $5 million less than what he's going to get paid next year. This year is really the crux of all of this. Because if the Avalanche were able to get whatever they needed to work out with Mikko Rantanen worked out, they would not be able to afford Brock Nelson this year. And I don't know how, if you're the Avalanche, or if you're Mikko Rantanen for that matter, that you say, all right, we're going to agree on a deal that's $5 million less, and then it's going to jump after that. I don't know a lot of NHL contracts and where they're like, hey, we want to sign you to this, but we can't give you that much money right now. You got to wait. I don't know if you can finagle that. So when we're talking about the Mikko Rantanen trade and everything that has happened since, it's not as much about is Marty Necas better or will he be better than Mikko Rantanen? I think the answer, as well as Marty Necas has played this year, I don't think that he'll be better than Mikko Rantanen. I don't think he's a better player now, and I think Mikko Rantanen will always be a better player than Marty Necas. Except maybe Necas has a couple years on him, so maybe at the very end of Mikko Rantanen's career. But the point is, it's not about whether Marty Necas is better than Mikko Rantanen. The question you have to ask yourself is having Necas plus Brock Nelson better than having Mikko Rantanen? And you can have an opinion right now about it. We don't know yet. We don't know yet. The results with those two last year were no better, and in some ways were worse if you go back longer term when it comes to the results that they have had with Mikko Rantanen. Right? Because they won a Stanley Cup with him. So we don't know the answer to that question yet. That's what this year is all about. But like what I run through my head, because they're going to have both Necas and Brock Nelson under contract for the next couple of years. You know, how can they afford to have the two of them under control? Well, the NHL salary cap is jumping up the next couple of years. It was just this year, and I'm like, was there any way that the Avalanche could have figured this out for 1 year? Right? For one season to be able to improve the depth while still having Mikko Rantanen on the roster, and I can't. The timing was just not there. Which then makes me think that the Colorado Avalanche were perfectly willing to forego any opportunity to get a Brock Nelson to sign Mikko Rantanen. They were willing to do that. Now, we could talk about whether they were, being a little bit cheap with somebody who is a key piece to a Stanley Cup winner. But if they sign Mikko Rantanen, let's say Mikko Rantanen took exactly what the Avs were offering, they wouldn't been able to get Brock Nelson. Or I should say, they wouldn't be able to have Brock Nelson now, this year, because the salary cap doesn't jump up. So Brock Nelson, maybe they could have gotten him some way, somehow for last year, but he would be purely a rental. So just time ran out on the Colorado Avalanche, and this cap jump and all of this kind of stuff just didn't come to this team soon enough. But the bet is still the same, that the Avalanche, whether that was always part of the plan or it was a pivot after contract talks with Mikko Rantanen were at an impasse. But what the bet they're making right now is that maybe Necas isn't right now better than Mikko Rantanen, but Brock Nelson is a whole lot better than anybody at the second line center position that they have had since Nazem Kadri. And I can follow that logic. I can understand that. At the time, it's Rantanen for Necas, and you're going, that's not an upgrade. That doesn't make the Avalanche better. But Chris McFarland went out, got Brock Nelson, and another piece to the puzzle fell into place, and you understood it a little bit better. Could there have been a way where the Avalanche could have signed Mikko Rantanen to the same deal that reportedly he was willing to take in Colorado, which would have been a discount versus what he was willing to take on the open market? He ended up taking $12 million anyway from Dallas. Was there a way? I can't figure out a way, but I'm not an NHL general manager. Was there something that Chris McFarland could have done in order to pay Mikko Rantanen the $12 million, still trade for Brock Nelson, and be able to extend Brock Nelson? I can't find a way. Could he have? We may never know. Certainly you can say that the Avalanche team that you see before you in some form or fashion would not exist if they would have signed Mikko Rantanen to even a $12 million a year contract instead of trading. Does that cost them Brock Nelson? Maybe. Does it cost them a Victor Olofsson who just had a hat trick the other night? Does it cost them a Brent Burns? The team they have now was made possible in its entirety by trading Mikko Rantanen. And now Brock Nelson's under contract for the next couple of years. Marty Necas is under contract for the next 8 years. Nathan MacKinnon has a few years left on his deal. Gabriel Landeskog, now that he's healthy, that contract does not look like an albatross around the neck of the Colorado Avalanche. And how about this? Valeri Nichushkin makes $6.5 million a year. $6.5 million a year for Valeri Nichushkin. Now that he's available, now that he's playing every night, that's a bargain. But you know the next thing that has to get done. The next thing that has to get done is signing Cale Makar to what will inevitably be a record-breaking contract for a defenseman. And he deserves it. But this is the timing thing again. The salary cap in 2 years, which will be the first year under Cale Makar's new deal, is going to be $18 million higher than it is right now. That's how much the cap is jumping. Unfortunately, it didn't rise soon enough for the Avs to find a deal with Mikko Rantanen and still be able to do all this other stuff. But it sure looks like they're going to be able to get Cale Makar locked up. And then soon after that, it will be Nathan MacKinnon again, and around we go. They should have the cushion to be able to make that happen. Right? Because it's one thing trading Mikko Rantanen and all the feelings that brought up and all the debate. Losing number 8 is a non-negotiable. You can't. Him and MacKinnon, no. Untouchable. Cannot lose those two guys. Anybody else on this roster, there are levels to it. Mikko Rantanen was probably the next guy up in terms of not wanting to move him. But the NHL salary cap is going to jump up enough that even with this deal, which they did a lot of maneuvering, not to get into the minutia of it all, but a lot of this is signing bonus. A lot of this is front loaded, all this kind of stuff. So even to make Marty Necas' contract work starting next year, the Avs had to be a little bit creative. But the timing wasn't there. And the discussion, the debate, what we're looking for this year is whether in the end having Necas and Nelson is better than having Mikko Rantanen. Marty Necas signing an 8-year, $92 million extension that will kick in next season. Take your thoughts at 719-24-7. 13-13. Coming up next, Corey Roldan, his take on last night's Nuggets beatdown of the Pelicans and what the Broncos do without Pat Surtain. After the Air Force Army game this Saturday, head to Whataburger in Monument for their Bring Home the W post-game party. Wear your Falcons gear and get a free small shake with any purchase when you dine in. Plus, Red Mountain Highway will be there performing their own blend of Colorado country. That's the Bring Home the W post-game party at Whataburger just off I-25 in Monument. I can think of no one better to have on the show the day after the Nuggets tussled with the New Orleans Pelicans than the fine sports anchor for KKTV 11, proud Louisianan. How do I Louisianan? Is that right, Corey Roldan? You're muted. We got you muted. I still don't got you. Corey's working on it. Oh, he just left. He was very insulted by my butchering of the... Okay, there we go. Let's see here.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Hello there.
So we got to throw the flag on the play on that one.
Why?
The Pels need to leave Willie Green in Denver, man. That was horrible.
Okay. But Louisianan?
New Orleanian. Just say New Orleanian.
New Orleanian. Okay. That how much because we're obviously around here getting, a little bit excited about what the Nuggets have been able to put out there. You're the perfect person to kind of parse this and if there's any, tamping down of the excitement, you're the best one to do it. How much of last night is the Pelicans?
So a good bit is the Pelicans, but the good bit is the Nuggets. And we saw that. And really, I believe so far this season, even the loss at Golden State that took a incredible effort by Steph Curry. This bench is legit. I remember times last year where the Nuggets would be up by 18 points when Nikola Jokic would go out, and then that lead would be 5-6. Mm-hmm. Now you have Jonas Valanciunas and Tim Hardaway, guys who can make shots, right? Guys who could score 20 off the bench. Yeah, Russ could do that every now and then, but he wasn't a floor spacer like Tim Hardaway Jr. Dude, this team, honestly, you know what yesterday reminded me of, Ryan? I played a game against the Nuggets coaches last week, right? We lost 116-14. That's what it felt like watching.
Yeah. How was that, by the way? I do want to ask you about
full
that.
Court pressure, trapping, a lot of dunks. First 2 minutes, dude, I tried to get an easy bucket in there, going full Westbrook straight to the hoop. But, they were 7 feet tall, blocking my shot, and wasn't great, man. Wasn't great. It was fun.
Who'd you pick up defensively?
I don't even know. Oh, Chauncey Billups' brother, Rodney Billups.
Oh, Rodney Billups.
Yeah.
That did not and what I mean, I guess there are levels to it. I mean, you avoided Jared Dudley and JJ Barea, which probably is smart, but you don't get much relief going up against Rodney Billups.
No, a former D1 college basketball coach. I mean, these dudes compete against Nikola Jokic, Jamal Murray every day. They were very in shape. They wanted to embarrass us. And David Adelman, I asked him after. David Adelman told him, don't let the foot off the gas pedal with the media. So they were trying to prove a point. It was fun now.
Well, let me ask you, are the Nuggets trying to prove a point with these first 4 games?
No, I think they're trying to get used to each other. Cam Johnson even gotten into rhythm yet, right? Wait till Cam gets into rhythm and he starts hitting his shots. Christian Brown, such an improved player. Aaron Gordon, he's not going to do the 50 points like he did in game 1, but what he can do is what he did last night and defend Zion at a very high level and make the gritty plays. Nikola Jokic. But the big difference to me is what I stated earlier. It's the bench. It's Tim Hardaway Jr. It's Jonas Valanciunas. It's Bruce Brown. It's Peyton Watson and Julian Strawther. If Julian Strawther is your 10th guy off the bench, You're in pretty good shape. What was he last year? Second, third?
Yeah, I think it was kind of a thing. If they needed more defense, they go Peyton Watson. But if they needed more offense, it would be Strother. And
Yeah,
now he's
they're loaded.
buried.
They're
Yeah.
loaded, man. Just this.
And all it took, and here's the thing I just kept thinking last night. All it took essentially was just trading Michael Porter Jr.
Yeah.
And that's it. And then all of this other stuff was possible because say what you will about the Sacramento Kings organization, and plenty has been said about them, and everything that people say is absolutely correct. But like, I don't know that they looked at Dario Saric as value to them. So it's not like, oh, beauty in the eye of the beholder. Dario Saric had a little bit of value around the league. No, he didn't. So it was absolutely the Michael Porter deal that opened up all of this stuff.
And I will say, dude, Valanciunas would still be a top 25 center in today's NBA if he was getting that kind of minutes. He's a legit starting center still in this league. He is so skilled as a big man. I watched him a lot with the Pelicans. He got 17 and 10 every year, and that was just 2 years ago. But to have him coming off your bench for Jokic is just – this basketball team is going to be fun to watch. It's like the Avs, too. What a golden era of Colorado sports.
I know, right?
All you fans out there, enjoy this. Your football team 6-2. Your basketball team has the best player in the world, and they're deep. The Avs are great. You could be like New Orleans and have the worst record in the NFL. Your head coach gets fired, and your basketball team's winless.
That is true. The grass isn't always greener. That's for sure. Let me ask you about that 6-2 football team. Your level of worry around Pat Surtain's injury.
So the next two games, I think they can manage. But look, let me tell you about Pat Surtain, what a lot of people aren't talking about. The Broncos are able to play more aggressively defensively when you have a cornerback like Pat Surtain because he takes away half the field. And the reason why you can play man-to-man coverage, he's going to cover the number one receiver. You don't have to worry about that. When Pat goes out, they believe in Chris Abrams' drain. I talked to them yesterday in the locker room. And KAD played pretty good against the Chargers last year. Struggled a little bit when he came in against the Cowboys, but not too much. And, I mean, the Texans' offensive line is just so bad. They looked good against the 49ers, but if you get pressure on that O-line and they don't run motion, I don't worry as much about the Texans just destroying you. Same thing with the Raiders. I just think the Raiders are a mess. But the Chiefs, the Commanders, the Chargers, those games not the Chargers, the Packers coming up in December, you need to get him back, at least for the Commanders or the Packers game, because that's really when you need him. But, yes, it's concern.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to play more zone.
Yep.
Me and you are in disagreement about Riley Moss. I think Riley Moss is a really good football player, and he gets a lot of targets to him, and he has the lowest completion percentage in the NFL. And some of the pass interference calls, I really don't understand. Like the Giants one, dude,
we're of like mind on the Giants one.
And also last week against the Cowboys, the fade to CeeDee Lamb in the back corner of the end zone, that was perfect coverage. Perfect coverage. Dude, Moss gets thrown at – you got to understand this. I watched a lot of bad cornerback play. I'm a former college defensive back. I know what bad cornerback play looks like. You know what that looks like? Who's the guy who got cut when Jerry Jeudy went off last year?
Oh, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. Touchdowns. Moss doesn't get beat like that.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he'll give up a touchdown here and there, but he's not getting beat like that. Burnt. You have a really good defense because you have a good second corner.
Yeah, and I said this the other day. It's the truth is probably somewhere in the middle, right? Is Riley Moss burnt toast on a week-to-week basis? No. Is it, 1A, 1B in the Broncos secondary? No, it's not that either. There's a large discrepancy between Pat Surtain and Riley Moss, but
there might be a large discrepancy
yeah.
in the whole league between Pat Surtain and the
Fair.
third quarterback.
Yeah, which would be who? Like Sauce Gardner, maybe? And we don't even talk about that guy anymore.
As well. It's good.
Stingley.
Go ahead.
I said the second best corner in the league might be Derek Stingley, who plays for the Texans.
No, he would be. LSU
Yeah. Yep. Go Tigers.
Player. That defense is incredible, by the way. That defense gets after you. They got some pass rushers. D'Amico Ryans is a really good defensive coach. That's their identity. That's why they're hanging around in games. Their offense has been atrocious. I don't understand their offense, Ryan. I don't. They were so good CJ Stroud's rookie year. They're last in the NFL in motions. Now, they did start running motions versus the 49ers.
Mm-hmm.
But, dude, Stroud's a good player when you have a running game and you use play action. They're just dropping back, not using play action, 1, 2, 3, throwing the ball. And teams are just picking apart their horrible offensive line.
Yeah, it's I'm curious to see him
I think
up close and personal. I talked about this yesterday. He is getting the ball out at about the same rate that he was 2 years ago. So there are some signs. And look, the Texans have won, 3 of 4. Not that who they're going up against is the 85 Bears every week. But maybe there is some trend, to your point, about maybe some more pre-snap motion and things like that. Maybe CJ Stroud is getting back to what he was 2 years ago.
Maybe. I feel like it's going to be a weird football game. I don't know if I could predict that football game, Ryan.
Mm-hmm.
Gut feeling wise. The Broncos are in such a high. They're dominated the Cowboys. And you had that Giants win. Now you go on the road without your best player in Pat Surtain. It's going to really come down to, can the offense not turn over the ball? Can the offense control the game, the tempo? And then the biggest thing to me is convert in the red zone, because that's a good defense. They will bend, not break. Can you get touchdowns instead of field goals?
Is it in advance? I heard Vance Joseph. I'm going to play this audio in a little bit. He didn't say. He said it wasn't going to be just one guy, and I get that. And you and I are of like mind about more zone defense and all that kind of stuff, which is more of a collective effort. But if we're just talking the roster spot, if you will, that has opened up with Pat Surtain getting injured, is it definitely Chris Abrams' drain, or now with a week to prepare that maybe this is where we see Jahdae Barron kind of take center stage?
I think it's going to be a mix of both, but, man, I would love to see Jahdae really get run, because he's a smart football player, and he got that pick last week. I think the kid's going to be a stud, and he's really good on run defense as well. Me personally, I want Jahdae.
I'm with you. I mean, he's your first round pick. And when you make a first round pick, it's not just, and setting aside the quarterback position, because we know there's some quarterbacks that go early that need development. But if you're getting somebody out at a different position in the first round, it's not just who you think they'll be eventually. It's also about their readiness to go now. And we just haven't, and look, it's not like anybody is pining for Jahdae Barron in terms of the Broncos have this huge hole in the secondary they can't fill. But it's just like you draft him because you think that he's about as ready to go as anybody is. I just don't see, if not this week, are we going to get a game where Jahdae Barron is kind of sticks out a little bit more than he has through the season?
And I'm going to be honest, just watching him, he's been better than Jaquan McMillan.
Yeah.
McMillan. He's been better in the slot. I definitely want to see him this week, though.
Yeah.
And I want to see how they use him, because he's a good, rusher off the edge too. He can get some pressure on those slot cornerback blitzes. Honestly, what I would like to see, just to mix it up, throw different things at the Texans. One drive, put him at nickel. One drive, put him at corner. And then go do Moss, KD, and then Barron. And then go Barron, Moss, and then Millen.
McMillan. Yeah. It'll be very interesting to see, and I'm with you. I think the next 2 games you can get by, and I'm not ruling out the idea that the Broncos could beat the Chiefs in a couple of weeks.
They don't have one receiver.
Yeah. What I've just kind of said is that it's a game that you want all hands on deck, right? Like, you can say that. You have to feel a little bit worse about that game, but the biggest weakness of the Chiefs is what the Broncos can exploit with their pass rush, right? It's the offensive line. They're missing 2 starters off that. So I'm not closing the book on the idea that the Broncos can beat the Chiefs. I'm just saying that's the one that, if you're a Broncos fan, you really fret not having him.
Yeah, you're right. And then everybody counted out the Chiefs when they started 0-2, and then that looked like, I mean, they're back to being the Chiefs.
Yeah, well, it's like, the first couple of weeks, it was kind of proving people right, because you thought there would be
a drop.
There had to be a regression when you win that, and you know this, Corey. The number of 1-score games that they won, like, that's just not something that you're able to sustain year in and year out. So when they lost 2 close games early, it was like, well, here comes the regression. And so the Kansas City Chiefs just decided to, beat everybody by 3 touchdowns and not worry about the whole 1-score thing.
So I will say this too, Ryan. The Broncos in the next couple of weeks with the Chiefs can really separate themselves. And what I mean by that, they play at Buffalo this week, right?
Correct.
Buffalo hasn't had success in the playoffs, but they have had success during the regular season against Kansas City.
Right.
So
and then they have a bye week.
Yes. If Buffalo can beat the Chiefs, okay, the Broncos also get some rest because they play that Thursday night game against the Raiders. All right. If the Broncos can beat the Chiefs, then that's 5 losses on the year for Kansas City. And the Broncos can be 9-2. It's a 3-game lead. And their schedule after that gets a lot harder for Denver. You almost need that cushion because you got on the road to Kansas City, you got the Chargers, you got the Packers, you got the Jags, and you got on the road at the Commanders. That's a tough schedule.
It is. About 1 game at a time. It's
100%. You're right.
Right. Even though we don't adhere to that, we look 3, 4, 5 weeks into the future. But your point's well taken, right? Like that, the Broncos have a chance to not just be right there with Kansas City, but to have some separation. And even if they can't overcome the loss of Surtain against the Chiefs, they could still be in a position where they're leading the division going into their bye week. So we'll see how it goes Sunday against the Houston Texans. What have you got cooking for 5:30 and 10 tonight?
So we got Marty Necas signing with the Broncos, and we also have talking about J.K. Dobbins, just how much he loves Denver, how much he's fit. He's been a bulldozer. The Broncos got a good 1-2 punch in the backfield. So we got that at 5:30. At 10, it's on a high school football. So week 10, dude, it's flying by. But yeah, that's what we got for today. Also, watch Saturday morning, 9:30 before Air Force Army. We got a Falcon Nation special. Air Force. Talk to Jesse Kurtz, and we're gonna have a bunch of really good content before the game. So make sure you tune in. And not just, it would be a good idea for you to do that anyway. But what channel, remind me, is Air Force Army on this weekend? KKTV, right before. Yeah. So you get a little pregame show before the game, and then you get to watch the game on Channel 11. It's perfect. It's synergy, I think, is what we call that in the business, Corey, if I'm not mistaken. Thanks, bud. It's been great, man. I appreciate you having me on. Yeah, it's always my pleasure. Talk soon. That is Corey Roldan, outstanding sports anchor for KKTV 11, talking some ball
And that's, he knows the Pels and he knows the Nuggets. And he said last night was a lot of both. A lot of who the Pelicans are, but a lot of who the Denver Nuggets are and may become. And I want to talk about them as well coming up here on the show. For now, I'll take your thoughts. We've opened it up. Broncos, Necas, and the Nuggets all on the table. 719 24/7 1313. Back after this. Switchbacks FC facing FC Tulsa this Saturday in the USL Championship playoffs, and you can watch the match from the field at Widener Field. That's right. Gates open at 5. Kickoff is at 6. It's free. The admission is free. No ticket needed. They got $5 beers. They got a bunch of games going on, activities throughout the stadium that you can take part in. Got great sales on Switchbacks merchandise. And least important of all, yours truly and Roland Vargas will be calling the match from the stadium. It'll be a fun time. You should totally come. 5 o'clock, gates open, 6 o'clock kick. Let's pack the pitch Saturday at Widener Field. Marty Necas signing an 8-year contract extension with the Colorado Avalanche, and you look at the average annual value and you go, kind of thought Mikko Rantanen was going to be at about that level. Why, if they were unwilling to make a deal with Rantanen, would they be willing to turn around and hand that money to Marty Necas? And the most basic answer is they can't afford Mikko Rantanen's contract this year. They can't. Marty Necas isn't making the $11.5 million that he will average over the course of his contract starting this year. It's starting next year. He's making $6.5 million this year. It would be great if the salary cap, because of the TV deal and all this stuff, kicked in this year. Then the Avs could look at it and proceed in the same direction they've been going in, with the changing out of the goalie room and bringing in Brock Nelson and some of these depth signings like Victor Olofsson. It would have been great. But the fact of the matter is they would not be able to do all of that if Mikko Rantanen was on the books for $12 million this year. Could that have been better planning on Chris McFarland's part? It's hard for me to be critical because I don't see a way that would work. Ryan suggested or pointed this out that in theory would work. Right? How do you get Mikko Rantanen, who is set to become a free agent, to sign a long-term deal, and the first year of that deal be for $5 million less than the rest of the deal? I've never heard of that. But Ryan's right. Avs would have had to sign Rantanen to a 1-year deal for less money and then re-sign him to a longer term next year. Do you think that there's any chance that would have happened? If you're Mikko Rantanen, would you be okay with the 1-year prove-it deal? When you think at the time, because again, go back, Mikko Rantanen ended up taking less than he was wanting from Dallas. Not less than he was willing to take with the Colorado Avalanche, mind you. The demands that Mikko Rantanen had for Carolina and then Dallas were greater than the demands that he had of the Avs. He was willing to take what he thought was less than his market value. And then the Avs trade him, and he finds out that his market value is not as high as he thought it would be. And he ends up essentially taking the same amount of money he was willing to sign with the Avs for. That's kind of the way it happened here. But Mikko Rantanen's not going to take a 1-year deal. Nor should he. That's too much uncertainty. But what you're left with now is whether Necas and Nelson, I mean, if you want to throw in an Olofsson or a Brent Burns, I kind of feel like some of those moves, the Gavin Brindleys of the world, could have still been acquired, but it's Nelson and Necas. And Chris McFarland understanding that one of the biggest issues for this Avalanche team has been the departure of Nazem Kadri. And he's trying to solidify that spot with Brock Nelson. What you hated as an Avs fan is that it took trading one of your cornerstone franchise players in order to get it done, but it just looks like that's how it had to happen. Because if the Avs end up, let's say Mikko Rantanen's willing to meet the Avs, sign for 11.75, you can't get Brock Nelson for more than a half a season. With less new, could the Avs have made a cup run? With Mikko Rantanen and rental version of Brock Nelson? It's possible. But with everything new last year, they weren't going to win the Stanley Cup. And it just so happened that they run into Mikko Rantanen, who had revenge on his mind and played great hockey. But this year is the year. This is the year where we finally answer. And, you know, the first part was, can you get Brock Nelson? First, it was, how does it look in the first half a season of this experiment, if you want to call it that? Okay. Largely unsatisfying. Right? You run into the Stars again. You lose to the Stars again. Okay, but you saw it. Then it was, well, you got to sign Brock Nelson. And I was saying that as soon as the season ended, there's no way you make all of these deals. And I'll rope Necas into it. If you're the Avalanche and you're making this deal with Mikko Rantanen, and I can see the logic now that all the other moves have been made by Chris McFarland, but at the same time, you can't let yourself lose Brock Nelson and Brock Nelson only be a rental, and you can't go through the whole thing you just went through with Mikko Rantanen with Marty Necas. So the next step was going to be, you got to lock up Nelson and Necas. Chris McFarland has, and now we see if sacrificing a little bit off the top, whatever gap there that exists between Marty Necas and Mikko Rantanen, you're going to remove that, but you're going to greatly improve the second line center position. And we'll see if it plays out. Unfortunately, through 82 games, that's not what the goal is here. We got a long way to go before we truly find out whether this all worked out for the Colorado Avalanche. But they're hitting the benchmarks along the way. And today was another one, getting Marty Necas locked up. Could you imagine us having the same conversation about Mikko Rantanen or the same conversation about Necas that we were having about Mikko Rantanen? You can't go through that again. And they won't be. And it helps, too, that in the last few games, you see that second line start to get going a little bit. Right? And it was going to take some time. But about 10 games in, Gabriel Landeskog still looking for that goal, that elusive regular season goal, his first since, the Stanley Cup year. But that second line is showing some signs of life. Valeri Nichushkin has been arguably one of the best players on the Avalanche so far this season. And now Brock Nelson getting going a little bit. So that second line is starting to figure some things out. Avs taking on the Vegas Golden Knights tomorrow. And remember, that is an afternoon game, which leads me into a programming note. Tomorrow is the Smack Off on the Jim Rome Show. And because of the respect that I have for Jim Rome and his career, and also this event, this being a special event, we will air the Smack Off in its entirety. So I'll be joining you a little bit later tomorrow, but certainly willing to do it. I grew up listening to the Smack Off, so we'll let Jim Rome have a full 3 hours, and then we'll reconvene tomorrow at 4. But when we'll be talking about the Avs in Vegas, as they'll play an afternoon tilt out in Sin City tomorrow afternoon. 719-247-1313 coming up next. Is it too early to get excited about the Nuggets bench unit? Welcome in hour 2 on this Thursday. Dolphins and Ravens tonight to kick off week 9. Lamar Jackson back. Talk about where the Ravens can get with Lamar Jackson. They hope the rest of the way. Our coverage from Westwood One beginning at 5:30. In the meantime, if you'd like to chat, you can call or text into the show, 719-247-1313. And, of course, if you're watching the show, like you can on a daily basis on our social media platforms like Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube, you can always interact right there by dropping a comment. And perhaps you would like to comment on what we are seeing right now from the Denver Nuggets. The Denver Nuggets absolutely beat down the New Orleans Pelicans last night. It turned out to be a laugher. Was not always that way. Got a little bit iffy in the second quarter, but the Nuggets end up winning 122. I think it shows the mentality of this Nuggets team, because if you've watched enough Nuggets basketball, okay, not only are the Pelicans not a good basketball team, they're not completely healthy. Zion was a game time decision, ended up playing, but was he 100%? Didn't look like it. Pelicans are not at full strength. In the past, that would be a game that at the very least, you'd be saying to yourself, why is it this close? And there are a few occasions, like last year with the Wizards games, where you're going, how in the world did the Denver Nuggets lose that basketball game? So I think there's a seriousness to the way that the Nuggets approach that game, primarily after halftime. It was like they came out really well, and then the second quarter they kind of messed around, and then they locked back in the third quarter and just blew the doors off of the New Orleans Pelicans. And they are doing things that have not been done through this juncture of the season. One of the things that was interesting to kind of showcase how much of a wagon this team is right now, they are the first team in NBA history to score at least 120 points and shoot better than 50% from the field in the first 4 games. Right? It's never happened before. A start like this, just in terms of how good the Nuggets have been offensively. And you don't end up scoring 4 straight games of at least 120 points, and you don't do it on better than 50% shooting in all 4 games if the second unit is not pulling their weight. And the second unit last night was outstanding. Some of the lines here you had, and I mean, everyone got in, but how about Jonas Valanciunas? 14 points. No, 10 points. 10 points in 14 minutes, 5 of 7 shooting. Tim Hardaway, 14 minutes. He went 4 of 6 from the field for 11 points. Bruce Brown shot 2 of 3 from the field. Even guys like Peyton Watson, 2 of 2. You know who's really stuck out to me is Peyton Watson. I think he's had a very good start to the season. So you don't put up those kind of numbers unless the bench is pulling their weight here. And the bench has. And Peyton Watson has been able to thrive. Why? Because he's far from the most important player on that second unit. And I'm not trying to knock Peyton Watson, but think about the role that he played. He was one of 3 guys that would come off the bench? Well, he's got to do something. Now he comes off the bench. He could block some shots, which he did a few times last night. But he's got Tim Hardaway who can score. He's got Brucey B that can score, the Jonas Valanciunas. I think Peyton Watson looks better because not as much is being asked of him. The Nuggets bench right now is 11th in the NBA in scoring. They're the 11th highest scoring bench unit in the National Basketball Association. They may not be there by the end of the season. They may not. But the year the Nuggets won the title, the Nuggets bench was ranked 19th. So they can slip a little bit and still be, from a production standpoint, as good as the bench that the Nuggets won a title with. And you compare them to what they were the last 2 years, which is really what has been the breath of fresh air for Nuggets fans. It's almost like they've never seen this before. Last year, they were 27th in bench scoring. The year before that, 25th. So you certainly haven't seen a Nuggets bench unit this productive in a while. And you even build in the idea that, okay, they're probably not going to be, they played the Suns one game, they played the Pelicans one game, the schedule will even out. There will be much more difficult games than this, and they'll probably drop a little bit, and they will. I mean, they can drop 8 spots and still be at the same level as the bench that helped the Nuggets to a degree win a championship. So they have room to slip and still be the best bench unit we have seen from the Denver Nuggets in years. And that's why Jamal Murray said it reminded him more of the bubble team than the championship team. Because that bubble team, that was before Jeremy Grant got paid. They had Mason Plumlee as the backup to Nikola Jokic. Like, you can see why he would make that comparison. But the bubbles, that was a while ago. And look, even if the bench unit slips a little bit from where they are, the Nuggets starters are the 6th highest scoring starting 5 in the NBA, and Cam Johnson still doesn't know what he's doing out there. Still can't find his role yet. And I said this the other day. Give him 10 games. Give him 10 games. If game 11, Cam Johnson comes out and it still looks like he's lost, then we got to have a conversation. I compare it to the Avs second line that I was discussing earlier. Brock Nelson played a half of a season. Gabriel Landeskog showed up for the playoffs. There's a lot of new here. Give them a little bit. And here we're double-digit games into the season, and you're starting to see that second line start to do some work. I'll apply that same logic to Cam Johnson. He's going from a situation in Brooklyn where he could do anything that he wanted and he needed to do anything he wanted because there wasn't much talent on that team. Now he's being fit into a similar box that Michael Porter was put in. Give him some time, give him to game 10, and then we'll pick up the discussion then. But if the bench unit, you look at them and you say, no way they're going to stay there. Maybe not. But could you imagine the starting 5 being ranked higher than 6th by the time the season is over. I think you can. But you add it all up, and the Denver Nuggets look scary good. Scary good right now. And the guy that really ties everything together is Jonas Valanciunas. Nikola Jokic spent 8 minutes on the bench. 8 minutes of clock time. Not 8 minutes of you looking at your watch. 8 minutes of actual game time. Nikola Jokic not on the floor, and the Nuggets lead grew. Even against teams like New Orleans, that was not the case last year. And with Valanciunas, give him credit for his production. Very efficient last night, scoring in double figures. But I think in addition to that, it's the Nuggets can be the same team with a lot of the same ideas and same actions with the second unit with Valanciunas in there as they are with Jokic. There's a drop-off in talent. There's a disparity in talent there. No one's saying Jonas Valanciunas is even in the same league as Nikola Jokic. But when you can run the same offense, that continuity, whether it's with an entire bench unit or with it staggering Jamal Murray with the second unit, you can do a lot of the same things. I think that continuity has been a big reason why you see a Nuggets team being able to score over 120 points each game and shoot over 50% each game. He's the key, and this is not breaking news. We talked about this a lot during the offseason. That was the big get, was getting Jonas Valanciunas. And he's fitting great, and this bench unit is humming along. Games will get more difficult than the New Orleans Pelicans, with all due respect. They won't shoot 50% a game and score over 120 points every single game. But the schedule is the schedule, and everyone has played only a handful of games. And the Nuggets arguably off to one of the better starts in the NBA. I know there are a couple of unbeaten teams. Victor Wembanyama looks amazing. But so far, this bench unit is everything that the Nuggets hoped and dreamed it would be. David Adelman discussed the ability to sit Nikola Jokic, as I mentioned, for 8 consecutive minutes on the game clock.
I have to be careful with it, though. Like, it's great we can do it, but I also thought he was stiff when he came back in. So there is a trade-off to all this stuff. But yes, you're exactly right. For him to play 27 minutes tonight, I thought Jonas was great. Tim, obviously, really good. Peyton's energy. Bruce was great. And then I was really proud of Julian. I keep saying this. I'm not saying it just to sound cool or whatever. You got to stay ready. And we have a lot of good players. So when it's your chance, take advantage of it.
Well, but here's the thing with Julian Strawther, and he wasn't as impressive. He had a couple of shots. But he and Peyton Watson, I was talking about this with Corey Roldan last hour. Like, they were the two of the first guys off the bench. And now Julian Strawther is really only coming in when the Nuggets have a big lead. And what that means about his future, I don't know. What role is he going to have on this team moving forward? With the Christian Brown deal that they made, they're going to have to reshuffle the deck in a couple of years, right? They're not going to be able to keep this team together now that they paid Christian Brown. Just not. They're going to have to make some other kind of move or start to bargain shop. And maybe that's the time where Julian Strawther is going to be more relied on again, or Peyton Watson will be. But for now, Watson's coming in early off the bench, but he's just be what you are. Maybe he can hit a shot or two, but be a defensive menace. And then Strother comes in. They're already getting production from a number of places. Julian Strother can come in and kind of bolster that. They're just not asking as much from those two as they did last year. And that tells you how improved this second unit is. Nuggets went on a 29-2 run in the third quarter. 29-2. Against other professional basketball players. They look scary right now. I'm eager to see what they can do against better competition. 719-24-7, 13-13. Coming up next, how will Vance Joseph adjust the Broncos defense without Pat Surtain on Sunday? After the Air Force Army game on Saturday, head to Whataburger in Monument for their Bring Home the W post-game party. Wear your Falcons gear and get a free small shake with any purchase when you dine in. And you're going to want to dine in because joining you for the Bring Home the W post-game party will be Red Mountain Highway performing their own blend of Colorado country. That's the Bring Home the W post-game party at Whataburger, just right off of I-25 in Monument. Pat Surtain, unavailable for the Denver Broncos on Sunday against the Houston Texans. Very rarely do the thoughts of Vance Joseph make it onto these airwaves, and that's not an anti-Vance Joseph thing. It's just Sean Payton usually covers everything that we need, to be quite honest. But when it's the defensive side of the ball and when it's something as significant as losing the reigning defensive player of the year, you kind of want to hear the thoughts of the man coordinating that defense. And here was Vance Joseph earlier this afternoon, obviously being asked how difficult it is losing Pat Surtain.
Well, Pat's a great player, obviously, Mike. You're never as good who's going to play there and who's playing where, and what are you doing without Pat? Versus for me, I don't care. I have a plan for the tight end, for Nico if he plays or not. Again, it's system and it fits all the players, Houston's and ours.
Well, when you have a defense that is playing as well as Vance Joseph's, you would exude a bit of confidence as well, even in the face of an injury to your best player. And I think if you listen to what Vance Joseph was saying there, and I especially find the point about quarterbacks, maybe it being good for them, younger quarterbacks, when the decision is kind of made for them. And that so they get rid of the ball, they just throw it to their best matchup. The idea that you just blitz the crap out of young quarterbacks and put them under all sorts of pressure. But I think Vance Joseph's point is an interesting one. And it's one that I think has come up now and again. Remember when Sam Darnold was seeing ghosts? That was about the coverage of the New England Patriots. Not about their pass rush. They confused him. And I think now, especially with Pat Surtain being out, I think that the game plan defensively will be, let's confuse C.J. Stroud. Or let's try to. And how do you confuse? It's not man coverage. Man coverage isn't confusing. Zone coverage can be. So would the Broncos like to play this way? Of course not. There's a reason why they have Pat Surtain and the reason why they play the way they do with him. But when you don't have him, now it's a chance for you to maybe scheme up a little bit more. Instead, I think so much of the Broncos, and this is not a slide on Vance Joseph and saying he's not a brilliant defensive mind, because he is, but because the Broncos have Surtain and they have Benito and they have Cooper and they have Allen and they have all this defensive talent, basically week to week, the Denver Broncos are just saying, we're better than what you have at the position on the other side, right? Our pass rushers are better than your tackles. Zach Allen is better than your guard. Pat Surtain is better than your receiver. And the Broncos win those matchups and have consistently throughout the season. Now, on the back end, you don't have that. You don't have that advantage with Pat Surtain. And you can't bring extra capable pass rushers because, let's be honest, the Broncos have other guys that can pass rush outside of Allen, Benito, and Cooper. But it's almost like now the way I would describe it is you're kind of splitting your defense into two. The front seven is going to be kind of playing one way, like you got to win your one-on-one battles. I'm not going to scheme up exotic blitz packages and things like that because we can't commit more numbers to the pass rush like the Broncos like to do. They're one of the heaviest blitzing teams in the NFL. So they're going to rely on Allen and Benito and Cooper to just win their one-on-ones and generate pressure that way. It's not going to be overly exotic. It's just going to be beat the man in front of you. On the back end, though, when it comes to coverage, it's going to be more confusion. So if the Broncos front can generate a pass rush and C.J. Stroud can be a little confused about what he sees downfield, that's the recipe for success for the Denver Broncos. That's going to be the plan. The question is that enough? Because CJ Stroud is a younger quarterback. He's not a rookie. He's not even in his second year. So I get where Vance Joseph is going with all of this. It makes sense. It's the way that they should play it with no Pat Surtain. But that's why this game is tricky. Because Vance Joseph is saying that the level shouldn't drop off, and that's all well and good, but it's going to. The Broncos are not truly playing to their identity, and they don't have their best player. The level of play collectively is going to drop a little bit. But they're doing that as they're facing a team that appears as if they're starting to figure some things out. And I'm not out on CJ Stroud yet. I still think he's a good quarterback. So that's why this one is tricky. Like, I think that the Broncos have enough to, not get torched by Houston, even without Pat Surtain. But at the same time, that difference, whatever that is, for the entire unit without Pat Surtain, however much that drops off, is that enough for CJ Stroud to exploit it and put up enough points for the Texans to win? And I echo the same sentiments that Corey had. I mean, at some point the Broncos are going to lose. Right? The idea that they're going to go the entirety of Pat Surtain's injury without losing, in addition to the win streak they're already on, they're going to drop one of these games. I really don't think it's Vegas. Could it be Kansas City? I think that seems like the most logical. But it absolutely could be that this week. Elite pass rush of the Houston Texans going against Bo Nix. And a good enough quarterback in CJ Stroud to maybe exploit the fact that the Broncos don't have their best player. I was going to say best defensive player. I don't need to do that. He's their best player. It is a tricky one. I'm leaning Broncos. But it's Thursday. I still have tomorrow to lock in my thoughts. Take yours in the meantime. 719-247-1313. The playoffs are here, and Switchbacks FC will unfortunately have to go on the road the entire way if they're going to repeat as USL champions. But you can support from our backyard because on Saturday, the club is hosting a watch party at Widener Field where you can sit on the field, watch the match, and listen to Roland Vargas and myself call the match. Now, in addition to that, there will be $5 beers. There will be games and other activities. There will be huge sales on Switchbacks merchandise. It is a whole thing, but obviously the main event is watching the Switchbacks take on FC Tulsa Saturday night, 6 p.m., Widener Field. There are no tickets. It is free. Show up. Gates open at 5. Enjoy yourself. Cheer on the Switchbacks as they try to repeat as USL champions. And I'll see you there. I will. Tonight, Ravens, Dolphins. Lamar Jackson is back. And I know what Lamar Jackson wasn't the problem for the Baltimore Ravens, right? Even missing him was not the problem. It's a problem, but it's not the problem. The problem with the Baltimore Ravens team is that their defense is not good. Lamar Jackson can't help that other than I'm going to outscore the other team. That's what Lamar Jackson is coming back to. The Ravens, until further notice, they got to outscore teams. The Ravens have a 1% chance of making the playoffs. But I look at where they're at. They're 2 games out of the division. 2 games behind the Pittsburgh Steelers. Let me run this by you. Ravens and Steelers play each other in Baltimore in 5 games. Right? There's 4 games between now and that matchup in Baltimore. Will the Ravens and the Steelers be playing for first place in the AFC North on that 5th day or 5th week, because it's the NFL, 5th week, where Pittsburgh visits Baltimore? Here's the schedule before you answer. The Baltimore Ravens with Lamar Jackson, and let's assume that Lamar Jackson is healthy, they play at Miami tonight. Then they will play at Minnesota, at Cleveland, and home. Oh, wait. Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm sorry. 6 weeks from now is when the Ravens play the Steelers. I was missing one. So, same question, though. In 6 weeks, will the Ravens and Steelers be playing for first place in the division? Ravens are in Miami, in Minnesota, in Cleveland, home against the Jets, home against the Bengals. That is their schedule. Pittsburgh, meanwhile, is Sunday home against the Colts. Then they go to the Chargers. They're home against Cincinnati again, playing Cincinnati. You know how the last one turned out. At Chicago and home against the Buffalo Bills. I am not entirely sure that I can say that the Ravens won't be battling the Steelers for first place 2 weeks from now. They won't be playing each other. I'm not so sure that the Baltimore Ravens going on the road to Miami tonight and having, for what it's worth, extra couple of days to prepare for the Minnesota Vikings, who are getting ready to welcome J.J. McCarthy back to the fold. And the Steelers playing against Indy and the Chargers. Are we talking about the Ravens just like that? 2 weeks go by, back with Lamar Jackson, and they're tied for first place. This is why even when Lamar got hurt, and even with as bad as the Ravens defense looked, you just can't completely count them out. Just look at it that way. If you look at the Ravens, you're like, they're a mess right now, and they are. They're less of a mess tonight because they're getting Lamar back, but overall, messy. But you have the Steelers engendered confidence in you with what they have done the last couple of weeks? Do you think that there's a third team in this conversation? And it's the Joe Flacco-led Cincinnati Bengals that just gave the Jets their first win of the season? I don't love the Baltimore Ravens, and if they are this team, let's just say tonight and moving forward, with Lamar Jackson back, they are essentially the same team they were before he got hurt. That team cannot beat Buffalo. And there's an argument that even the Baltimore Ravens at their best can't beat Buffalo. They're snake bit against them. I don't think they can beat Kansas City. So there's a bigger conversation about this Baltimore team that maybe we'll eventually have. But right now, the conversation has been the Ravens might be done, and I'm not so sure that they are. The Pittsburgh Steelers in that Cincinnati game. Like Green Bay's, look, I picked the Green Bay Packers to win the Super Bowl. I'm not going to look at the Pittsburgh Steelers losing to Green Bay, no matter where that game was played, and say that's a terrible loss. But I am going to look at the game against Cincinnati and say that was a terrible loss, regardless of where that game was played. You can't lose that game. And it's the type of stuff that has the Pittsburgh Steelers locked in to this 9-8, 10-7 stuff. Now, 10-7 might get them in the playoffs. But, I mean, this is a proud organization. How long is that going to be good enough? But this is the kind of stuff that this team has done. The minute you think, okay, they got something here, they'll lose one of these games like the one they lost to Cincinnati, and you go, same old Steelers. Now, the opportunity is there, I think, for Pittsburgh to say, no, we are not the Steelers of not so old. We really do have something here with Aaron Rodgers at quarterback. And actually, that's not even their problem, is it? This is not about Aaron Rodgers not being any better than Russell Wilson. He has been. The defense. The defense, yeah, the one with TJ Watt and with Jalen Ramsey and with Highsmith and with Hayward, that's their problem. Not Aaron Rodgers in the offense. But just looking at it from the collective, the Steelers have an opportunity the next couple of weeks, either one, both if you're a Steelers fan would be ideal, but either one, the Steelers can make a statement and say, I know the last couple of weeks have been rough. We truly are capable of more than the teams that you have seen the last few years. By beating Indy, arguably the NFL's best team, at home on this weekend, or going on the road, and it's not like it's in a tough environment they're going to be walking into in LA. If you didn't know any better, you would probably think that game in 2 weeks is the Steelers' home game. But that's a good Charger team. If they can win either one of these next 2 games, even if Baltimore does take care of business tonight against Miami and next week against the Minnesota Vikings, both not good teams, I still think you give the edge to Pittsburgh if they can win one of these next 2. But if they play like they have the last couple of weeks, I think we're going to be sitting here in 2 weeks' time and going, the Baltimore Ravens, Undertaker sitting up in a coffin gif. I don't know that I believe that the Steelers will be able to fend off the Baltimore Ravens over the next couple of weeks. And that's the opportunity that they squandered the past 2 weeks, losing to Cincinnati, led by Joe Flacco, and then, losing at home. Again, not a bad loss to lose to the Packers, but you need a bounce back, and they didn't get it. The Ravens, and we were having this conversation, was it yesterday, about teams that you believe in? A team that I can't count out is Baltimore with Lamar Jackson. I can't do it. I see the problems. I think the ship has sailed with any idea that the Baltimore Ravens are going to win a Super Bowl this year. I think you can count them out of that. But to participate in the playoffs, I'm not counting this team out. I'm not counting Lamar Jackson out. And the team they're chasing has not been one that has filled me with confidence over the last few years. So I ask you, in 6 weeks, are the Steelers and Ravens playing for first place in the division? Better question, 2 weeks from now, are the Pittsburgh Steelers and Baltimore Ravens tied atop the AFC North? I think it's entirely possible. But the Steelers can do something about that. Sunday against Indy or the next week against the Chargers. Either one. And maybe I'll move a little bit closer to, it's not going to happen for Baltimore this year. 719-24-7. 1313. Coming up next, it's the 3 stories that are driving the show. Hello there. Hour 3 on this Thursday, although it will only be 30 minutes because at the bottom of the hour, Westwood One's coverage of Thursday Night Football between the Baltimore Ravens with Lamar Jackson in tow and the Miami Dolphins. But that still gives us enough time to accomplish at least what I would like to accomplish. I don't know what you'd like to accomplish. You can let me know. 719-247-1313 by calling or texting into the show. Or if you're watching the show on YouTube, you can just drop a comment right there. And that would work just as well. Perhaps you have a thought on one of these stories, the 3 that are driving today's show. All right, we start with of their core. Marty Necas signs an 8-year, $92 million extension with the team. And if you do that math on a per-year basis, you will notice it is very close to the number that in many people's minds was supposedly too much to pay Mikko Rantanen. That's not 100% accurate. While, yes, $11.5 million a year is actually less than the Avalanche were reportedly willing to pay Mikko Rantanen, and $500,000 less than Mikko Rantanen currently makes per year from the Dallas Stars, this is all about Brock Nelson. Because if the Colorado Avalanche were to essentially just give this deal, give or take $250,000 to Mikko Rantanen, they would not have Brock Nelson. For this season, they could not make that work. Marty Necas this year is making $6.5 million, which allowed the Colorado Avalanche to bring back Brock Nelson for another couple of years. And the salary cap will escalate from here, allowing the Colorado Avalanche to then fit in what will be a record-breaking contract for Cale Makar in a couple of years. So the timing, kind of a lesser talked about aspect of why the Colorado Avalanche did what they did to trade Mikko Rantanen. But that's come into focus today because you're looking at it and you're saying, yeah, the Avs could have made even Brock Nelson work next year and the year after that and the year after that, but they could not make it work this year. So essentially the question that Chris McFarland posed to himself last year was, do I want just Mikko Rantanen for the next 8 years, or do I want Brock Nelson for the next X number of years and Marty Necas for the next 8? So this is not about Rantanen versus Necas, who is better. This is about, are the Avalanche as a team better off with Marty Necas and Brock Nelson than they would have been if they would have kept Mikko Rantanen? And the answer to that question, we don't know yet. Certainly, the results weren't any better last year. But there was so much new. Now it's a full year. Now we find out. But before the Avalanche get to the postseason and we really decide for ourselves whether all this was worth it, Chris McFarland had to both lock in Brock Nelson and Marty Necas. Those two things had to happen. Or else, why did you get rid of Mikko Rantanen if you were just going to lose Brock Nelson this past offseason, or if you were just going to lose Marty Necas after this year is over? The only way that this has a chance of working is if Necas and Brock Nelson are on multi-year deals, and now they both are. But all this other stuff about does Marty Necas even like it in Colorado? He once again dispelled those ideas. And any anxiety you as an Avalanche fan may have had, justifiably so, about going through the same thing this year with Marty Necas that the Avs went through with Mikko Rantanen next year, you can rest easy tonight knowing that Marty Necas is signed to an 8-year deal. And not only that, just as an aside, he has a full no trade clause for the first 7 years of that deal. He not going anywhere for a very long time. 8 years, $92 million. Now we go across the hall to Ball Arena for story number 2.
Pools in the left. Oh, rejected by Watson. Hardaway, straight away. Got it!
Altitude Television on the call. The Denver Nuggets absolutely whoop up on the New Orleans Pelicans, 122-88, and the bench was a big reason why. You look up and down the bench unit, everybody contributed, and everybody contributed in an efficient manner. And the Denver Nuggets, through 4 games, have become the first NBA team to put up at least 120 points on at least 50% shooting in their first 4 games of the season. Now, they don't make a banner for that, but what it is showing you is that this improved bench unit looks improved, greatly improved. Because you can't put up those kind of numbers if it's the same old bench that isn't scoring points. And now you're forced to bring Nikola Jokic back in 30 seconds after you subbed him out. So this is a good, and I said this the other day about Jamal Murray and what he did against Minnesota. This is just a first impression. It's not the be-all, end-all. In fact, I will tell you that with 2 of the 4 games the Nuggets have played being against the Phoenix Suns and the New Orleans Pelicans, you should not look at the bench unit and say this is who they're going to be for the rest of the season. But right now they are ranked 11th in bench scoring in the NBA. The year they won the title, they were 19th. So even if they slip, even if more difficult competition leads to a rougher go of it for Hardaway and for Valanciunas and Bruce Brown, they have 8 spots to go, and they would still be at the same level as the bench was when the Nuggets won the title. And you flip it and look at the starters who all told don't look as good as the bench does, although they are putting up ridiculous numbers. They're 6th in the NBA in scoring. Just the starters are 6th in the NBA in scoring. Jamal Murray is off to a great start, so is Nikola Jokic. But they still have yet to kind of fit Cam Johnson into what they do. So with that being said, the Nuggets starters, who are the 6th highest scoring starting unit in the NBA, could you expect them to rise up the pecking order, even if the bench falls? I think you can. So this bench unit easily is better than they have had the last 2 years. And I think you can certainly book that for the rest of the season. They're going to be the last 2 years, they were 27th and 25th. But even if there's some regression as they don't get to play Phoenix and New Orleans every night, they still have some cushion and still can be arguably a better bench unit than they were when they won the title now going on 3 seasons ago. But another dominating performance and you look at this Nuggets team, other than a 5-minute stretch where Steph Curry went berserker and the Nuggets kind of fumbled it away, Nuggets have looked really good and quite dominant over teams that even last year they would kind of play with their food a little bit. Not last night. They blew out the New Orleans Pelicans. Well, to be fair, the second quarter was not one to celebrate, but it is a 4-quarter game. Nuggets 122, the New Orleans Pelicans 88. Well, at least as an aside, at least the New Orleans Pelicans have their first round pick this year that they can use. Oh, wait, no, they don't have that. They traded that to move up in this year's draft. Oh, okay, cool. Great job, Joe Dumars. Remember, he was the guy that drafted Darko over Carmelo and Dwayne Wade? Yeah. Same guy, New Orleans Pelican. Good hire there. Let's go to story number 3, shall we?
It can't be a drop-off when you lose only one player. As great as Pat is, we get that, but, we got a game to go win. And I expect us to play well. And the guys who are playing in place of Pat, I expect them to play well. That's why they're here.
Vance Joseph, Broncos defensive coordinator, putting on a brave face in the wake of Pat Surtain's injury. But I do believe him, right? I do believe that there's real confidence in the Broncos' ability to withstand this loss for this Sunday, for the Raiders game. Then it gets a little bit hairier. Then you got Kansas City. Then you got Washington, presumably with Jaden Daniels coming out of the bye week. You got Green Bay on the schedule. You got the Chargers again. You got the Chiefs again. But when you're dealing with losing your best player, you don't want to think about 2, 3, 4, 5. The question is, can the Broncos survive Sunday without Pat Surtain? And I think they can. I think they can. It's tricky. It's not going to be easy. But I think defensively, you can confuse CJ Stroud a little bit, play more zone, kind of a collective effort here. And hopefully freeze CJ Stroud for just long enough for Benito, Cooper, Allen to get to him. I think the defense can make it work. I still maintain that this game is going to be decided on whether the Broncos offense can have success against the Texans pass rush, which in a world where the Denver Broncos don't exist, might be the best pass rush unit in the NFL. That's where it is for me. I think that the Broncos defense will be as okay as you can be not having the reigning defensive player of the year. But it will be a collective effort. It will be the Broncos playing a little bit differently than they normally play. And we'll see how it all comes together on Sunday against the Houston Texans. We'll take your thoughts at 719-247-1313. Thursday Night Football coming up at the bottom of the hour here on Extra Sports 1300. This is your last reminder to get your votes in for our Extra Sports Athlete of the Week. The polls close tonight at midnight. Your nominees, all equally deserving. The Classical Academy flag football team that just won state. Pam Boyarko of Palmer Ridge Softball. Colton Kamba of Vista Ridge Football. And Anna Collins, who plays volleyball for St. Mary's. Go to extrasports1300.com. Cast your vote, and the winner will be revealed on tomorrow's show. It's our Extra Sports Athlete of the Week, sponsored by Blackjack Pizza and Salads. Now, obviously, the big news on the injury front for the Denver Broncos is that Pat Surtain is out. But there's also another one that could hurt on Sunday. And as I've said, I guess my interest level is very high to see how the Broncos defense deals without having Pat Surtain. But I still think the matchup to watch is the Broncos offense against the Houston defense. And another injury that the Denver Broncos currently have that impacts that matchup, Marvin Mims is in concussion protocol. And I'm reading a tweet from Mike Kliss earlier saying that he suffered the concussion accidentally coming back into the game on Sunday. And you're like, how is that possible? Because that's why I asked myself. Substitution mistakes. Someone on the Broncos sideline told Marvin Mims to get back in the game when it wasn't supposed to be him, and he suffers a concussion. Now, do you plan for that? Do you know that? No. Right? Like, you're not going to know that. But the fact of the matter is, according to Mike Kliss, Marvin Mims was not supposed to be in that game late. And that's when he sustained the concussion. I don't know if I want to get into this is not there's some injuries where you go, a guy with a hamstring or an ACL or something, you put him back into the game and, knowing his history or knowing what injury he was dealing with and he further exacerbates it, then you start, like when Jamal Murray tore his ACL, a few years ago at Golden State. Right? We were questioning the day after whether Jamal Murray should have been in that game at that point, given that he was already dealing with injuries. With Marvin Mims, this is a concussion. Not a guy that, to my knowledge, has a history of them, but it was, according to Mike Kliss, a mistake for Marvin Mims to come back into that football game. And that's when he sustained the concussion. So if Marvin Mims doesn't play, that's a blow to the Broncos offense. The only receiver in the NFL that has had greater separation this year, and that's the lifeblood of a receiver. Can you get separation? The only receiver that has been able to better separate from opposing defenders than Marvin Mims is Jackson Smith-Njigba. But we know this, right? Marvin Mims, that's what he brings to the table. Not to say that he's more important to this Broncos offense than Courtland Sutton, but he's an important piece. Potentially to take the top off the defense or to run one of these end arounds. That added weapon that Sean Payton has at his disposal, that Percy Harvin type, the comparison I keep making. This is a good Houston defense. And as weird as this is to say, in terms of this matchup with Houston, could you make the argument that Marvin Mims is more influential than Pat Surtain? And it's not because of who the players are. It's because just a belief level, right? Do you believe that the Broncos defense, even without Pat Surtain, is going to be able to hold down the Texans defense? I still think they can. Without Marvin Mims, not available in the screen game, not available to run the ball out of the backfield. He's an important, player to relieve pressure, to not allow the opposing team to pin their ears back. Keeps them off balance, keeps them guessing. That's the dynamic he brings to the offense. I think for this particular matchup, the Marvin Mims injury is a little bit more alarming. Longer term, in terms of just player to player, of course it's Pat Surtain. But this matchup, I say the thing that should worry you the most if you're the Denver Broncos is the Houston defense, especially their pass rush. And Marvin Mims is kind of key to being able to get separation, keep the defense off balance, and you may not, I should not count him out just yet, but you may not have him for Sunday. So we'll keep an eye on that. Pat Surtain definitely out. Marvin Mims, it's like the concussion protocol is like sending a rocket to the dark side of the moon. Like, if you're the Broncos, you just wait. You just wait till he reemerges and he's cleared to play. Broncos don't have a hand in this. This is a separate protocol, and the Broncos are just kind of waiting and seeing. And the only thing that's going to maybe give us a better idea is going to be the injury report, because Sean Payton isn't going to say a word about Marvin Mims. And most coaches don't. Like, Sean Payton's thing about injuries is unique to him, but the concussion protocol, nobody talks about the concussion protocol. Coaches don't wade into those waters. The official injury report will be our only glimpse tomorrow into whether Marvin Mims may play. And I don't even know that he can be cleared tomorrow. Isn't it usually a Saturday thing with the concussion protocol? So it's not all Pat Surtain in terms of the injury concerns for the Broncos heading into their game with the Texans. We'll have more on that tomorrow. Avs in action, afternoon game. That'll be fun. Avs in Vegas. See how Marty Necas plays now that he knows he'll be in Av for a long time. But again, the programming note, tomorrow I will start this show an hour later. Want, the smack off being what the smack off has been in sports talk radio low these many, many years. You can hear that in its entirety, and we'll be good. We'll be able to get done what we want to get done on a Friday, but the smack off is a special event, and I want to treat it as such. So you'll get Jim Rome from 1 to 4, and then I will join you at 4. Coming up next, the Ravens. Lamar is back, taking on the Miami Dolphins. Enjoy the game, and we'll talk tomorrow.